Whoever is standing there, I need you guys, can you come over closer? Because, yeah, if you didn't finish it here, welcome, finish it here. And then we're gonna talk again. Before we're going to start, I want to say thank you for Verifi for allowing to host our Meetup here. It's we are very excited about that, and I want to introduce Brian Ross. He is our internal people manager. I don't know.
It's good.
My co-worker.
That's right.
Okay, so please welcome him.
Sure, because I normally have a super loud voice, so try not to blow your ears out. Well, first, I want to welcome everybody. Very glad to have all of you here. As Verifi, as our company Verifi tries to continue to have a presence in the tech community, one of the ways that we're doing that is by hosting meetups and inviting everyone to come in and check out our space and hopefully have a couple great talks from this meetup group. But yeah, wanted to first welcome all of you and thank you for coming. Little bit about Verifi. So just so you guys know, we basically what we do is we're a software as a service company that provides software as a service products to merchants that are processing card not present payments. So helping them with chargebacks, disputes, fraud, things of that nature, just so that they can get a better return on investment. As most of you, I'm sure, are probably, I would say 90% of you are probably Amazon Prime members, just like myself, and I'm sure have looked at your credit card statement and probably said, I didn't make that transaction. And we help the merchants determine, whether or not it's fraud or it's a legitimate transaction. So it's a really great space to be in, not to mention awesome office. And I wish it was light out so you could see all the great views. Trust me, they are fantastic, I promise. Other than that, we are hiring, actually hiring for software test engineers. So anyone who is interested in a new opportunity, wants to know more about us and the opportunity, I'll be hanging out here. Please feel free to come and chat with me. Would love to chat with you about what you're looking for and tell you more about Verifi and the opportunity. But I can be long-winded, so I'm going to cut it there. As a recruiter, of course, we love to talk. But I'm going to turn it back over to Yevgeny. But thank you guys again. Please enjoy beers, pizza, drinks, all that stuff. So please eat up and just enjoy yourself while you're here. It's going to be some great talks. So thank you all.
Thank you. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. Azat will be presenting his first topic, and then my favorite one is the Ask Manager with my manager. And Vitaliy Ignatov, he is my co-worker. He will also be a presenter in the second one. And in the end, we'll do another networking session, not that dull that was like a while ago. We're gonna, yeah, so let's get started, and welcome to Azat. Please. Can use this thing.
Hey guys.
Oh, one sec. Yeah.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about how to start web automation in your company. So my presentation mostly aiming at people who are like not very technical, kind of have some understanding of how automation works, but like really for like maybe like manual QA engineers or like real for new people. So let me start to introducing myself. Who I am. So currently I'm a lead at TryMarket. I'm not sure if you heard about the TryMarket company. It's basically an e-commerce company who offers organic healthy food and sell it like online. So we deliver across the country, like doing a lot of like charity programs, like supporting like low-income families, and doing all of this cool stuff. Previously, I worked in a Beachbody. Like you probably heard of Beachbody. It's like a company who do like workout programs and all of stuff. Before that, I worked in a Touch Commerce. It's also like really cool company. Okay, let me start. So why do we need to automate testing? The reasons are simple. I feel like the main advantage of that's you're automating. Thank you. You're basically automating manual routine that you're doing like every day during your executing your regression test suites, and this actually saves a company a lot of money because instead of spending so many resources for like manual checks, you can like automate it and focus like on more interesting things, like more for exploratory testing and so on. Also, the second advantage is because like it's machine verifying your application, and if you like set really strong assertions, it will like fail. If like something goes wrong, it will fail. Like it won't like like it won't miss anything. It will fail right away. Also, the third thing is you can easily increase your coverage because once you set up automation framework and once you implement the test, you can like easily change environments like browsers, just setting the parameters, and it will run the same test across different browsers like easily. And also it can do it in parallel, so you will like, I mean, instead of like again wasting so many times, you can do it like easily. Right. And also the last one will help your developers. Once you integrated your test to CI system, it will help developers easily to determine the issues and fix them right away. Cool. So I'm gonna show how to start it in like 4 steps. The first step is, as I call it, like preparation. So like what you need to do first. So first of all, try to convince your manager. Just tell him like all of the advantages that web automation does, so he can like allocate resources, like maybe like give you more time in your like work routine to do that, or maybe like invite some other like more senior people who will help you, and maybe like allocate a budget. So it's, I mean, if not, if you don't have like so much resources, you can like try to, like practice like overtime or like do something about that. So what else? If in your project you don't have automation, but if your company is big enough and you already have automation in different teams, try to talk to people there to see like their solutions. Maybe this will be easier to use like their solution and adapt to your project. So you will like save a lot of time in exploring, and also you will have like experts who already struggled with that, and they should like easily help you to do it like as well. And so the third one is, I think it's one of the most important one. You need to choose actual tools or like programming languages that you're going to use to create your automation. So do a lot of research, find your right tool, because otherwise this will be bad if you already like wasted so many times to implement something, and you find out it's not fit for your company. This would be like really bad. And after that, you can like create simple automation test plan just to highlight like how you're gonna automate some other things. And you can also list all the tools that you're gonna use there, and like timeline, like in which you're gonna start to do that and complete it. Okay, so when we talk about web automation, there's actually plenty of tools. Like you guys probably all of you heard about Selenium, but it's not like the only tool for web automation. There's like a few of them. Here's some of the open source solutions like Selenium, Catalan, and Water, and also like paid solutions like RunRX and Test Complete. So which counts for questions, which one to choose, and like in different clients, like in desktop or like mobile, you have like different solutions. They kind of like equal. It's maybe hard to choose, but I feel like for a web, it's pretty obvious. It's better to go with Selenium WebDriver, and I'll explain you like why. So first of all, like right now, Selenium WebDriver is W3C recommendation. It's like a standard. If you never heard about W3C, it's a, I think it's like no-profit organization who sets like standards for a web, and other companies like is trying to follow it. So now Selenium are stable enough, like good enough for them to recommend from W3C. So it's actually a really big thing right now. So second of all, Selenium is open source, so that means you don't have to pay to use it. It's open source. Also, it has a really huge community support, so if you have any troubles during your building your automation framework, you can most probably will find solution easily just Googling it and going to Stack Overflow, because Selenium is old enough, and there was a lot of people who were like struggling. And from my experience, I know like I always was able to find something in the internet because so many people using it, and it's so easy to find it. Also, there's a lot of resources to learn, like articles, videos, like forums, like if you like Google, you'll like find a lot of like content that will help you to learn. And like for Selenium, there shouldn't be a problem at all. And also, Selenium supports most of the popular programming languages. Like you can like choose any language you want, like Python, Java, Ruby, PHP, JavaScript, whatever. So which comes to second problem, like which language to start with. I would say start with most comfortable language for you. And if you like don't know any programming languages, you can use the same language as your application are written. Let's say if your application written in JavaScript, you can like use JavaScript. So developers will like help you with like syntax and how to get like started. Also, like Selenium WebDriver has some of the cons. So first of all, like Selenium only allows you to test web application. Like if, for example, if you want to test like Chrome extensions or like some browser features, you won't be able to do that. You will need to find like different solutions for that. Like second thing is like it requires some basic programming skills. Like you will actually need to learn how to code if you want to work with Selenium WebDriver. Also, it's maybe harder to understand than like easy record and playback solutions. Let's go next. Step number 2, create automation framework. This will be like more complicated thing because, and also this is like very important because if you build like really strong, robust framework, this will be easier in the future for you, like to change your tests, change the logic, change the code, and all of the stuff. I would say it's better to spend extra time here creating a framework than changing it like after that, and make it like more scalable. Just to keep in mind, like maybe like let's say like year after you will have like 500 test cases, and like your framework should like fit all of them and should not like change very frequently. The second thing is try to use some best practices like page object model and some other ones. So it will be like easy to manage your test cases, I would say. Also, don't hesitate to ask your developers to help because they're developers. They work with code like every day. They can give you like some ideas how to build your framework from architecture overview. Like in my experience, I had like a lot of good suggestions from my developers, and they helped me to implement some of the part of them. So, and yeah, because they have like more experience, like they work with a code, it's more understandable for them how to build everything. Also, one of the most important thing, do not overcomplicate things. Try to keep it like as simple as possible, because after you build it, most of the people in your team should understand how it works. Like they should not like think like, hey, what this code is doing. It should be like pretty straightforward for them to get started. Let's go next, step number 3. After you finished your framework, it's time to write actual tests. And what you need to do here, my suggestion would be start with basic stuff that doesn't change a lot. Because UI tests, they're really fragile, because UI change a lot. So like as a first test cases, you need to find something like a smoke test that doesn't change like really frequently, so they will be like more stable, and it will be like a good basis for you. Also, smoke testing is a good candidate to automate. I feel like it's pretty obvious. Because like smoke tests, like they're performing like every time after like before each release or after like each merge. It's just easier to start with that. Also, the third one is make your tests more readable. So I don't like name your methods like pretty straightforward, or like name your test steps in a test more straightforward. So it will be easier for other people to read it. Maybe like if you will use some kind of BDD solutions like a Cucumber or a robot framework, this will be easier in terms of readability. And also, the last one is reference your manual test cases in your test, because the main idea of automation is to have like manual test cases and automate them. And if you're doing that, just to reference it in your test management system and like tag them, they're automated. So it will be easier, like if they will fail, this will be easier to find like a manual test case in a test system. Cool, let's go next. Step number 4, after you have a framework and after you have a test, it's time to integrate to CI. And what do you need? Like, why do you need to integrate to CI? CI, it helps you to run your test in some. It's maybe like running in schedule, or you can also like set some kind of hooks. Let's say like after your developers creating a release branch, you can set a hook in a Jenkins or like any other CI tool to start to run your tests automatically. So to do that, you need to work with your DevOps team, because most probably there are people who integrate CI systems. So they will have like more knowledge of it, and they will help you like set it up. Also, set up a schedule to trigger run of your test. You can like do it like nightly, like after you're going like after you finish your work, you can like set to run like your test suites, and you can see like results in the morning. This is like the most easiest thing. Also, choose environment where do you want to run your test. You can like, if it's like a web test, you can run them in Docker or use some kind of like testing cloud services like SourceLab or like Browser Stack, like any other. There's like actually a lot of them, so it's right to choose the things. So step number 5, after you have your test, it's integrated to CI, it's time to implement reporting. Like all managers, they may not see the code, but they want to see the coverage that you have, and they also want to see the percentage of your tests and failures or like passing tests. So there's a lot of tools to do that. It depends on the language or testing framework you choose. Like you can use standard reporting. Like if you choose some kind of BDD based frameworks like a Cucumber or robot framework, they generate like really nice reports. So you don't need to add like additional plugins to that. But if you use like some kind of basic testing frameworks, you will need to install like additional plugins to do that and generate like all of this like HTML reports, or maybe send them by email. What's next? And maintain. Yeah, so you will need to continuously maintain your test, because your application is changing, like UI is changing, and you need to be on track and to change it right away. Like, because if you won't touch it like for a while, it will be like all your tests will break, and there will be like no no sense to start to automate. So yeah, continuously maintain. So what are my challenges for starting web automation? Like UI tests in general, they're like very fragile. You need to keep it in mind all the time. Like compared to like API tests, they're like more like stable. They're not like changing a lot. So in UI, it's a different. And you need to design your tests keeping it in mind. Like instead of like maybe like hard coding like locators or like hard coding the logic, you may use like separate method and reference it there and to define logic there. So it should be like easier for you to change it. Also, as I mentioned, it requires some basic programming knowledges, so you should be like technical enough to do that. And also, it requires some basic testing knowledges as well. Like I had experience when like developers, they were creating a testing frameworks and automation test, but because they never like had a QA experience, they created by their like how they see the testing. And in many cases, it will just like all the because they mostly like covering like all the positive scenarios, and they may all like pass, but you will still push bugs or issues to production. So my general recommendations: do not rely on record and playback solution because it's really easy to start with, but it's really hard to maintain it. Let's say if you record your actions, right, and you're running it and it works. But then after some changes, it will start to break and you cannot really change it. You have to record it again and again. So this is kind of like wasting of your time and resources. Second thing is try to find existing solutions. Like let's say, maybe like find some templates for frameworks. Like instead of like building something by your own, try to find it in the internet. Maybe you have like already existing solution. Research on the internet, try to talk to more professional people, like as we do here, like trying to find people who already have experience and ask their like advices how to do things. Also, you can like take a courses of web automation or learn by yourself. Like as I mentioned, like in Selenium, there's a lot of content, so it should be good to do that. And I think that's it. Any question, guys?
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So when you decide that it's enough to automate, like, when is this bottom line, like, that's enough automation? Because we all know that it's impossible to automate everything.
Yeah.
When you decide it's enough?
Well, I never had this like problem in my life, to be honest. There's like always a lot of work. I feel like when you get like some kind of like decent coverage, like let's say if you have like 90% of the coverage of automated things, and the rest 10% doesn't make sense to automate, let's say because UI changes like every day, right? And there's like no reason to spend time. Like probably this is the time when you start like automating, or project is completed, and I don't know. Yeah.
Or when you out of budget.
Yeah, or when you are out of budget. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, for automation, there's a lot of work. Like again, like I never had this problem when I don't have the work to do.
So on your project, who decides what should be automated? Like you or your lead, or your, I mean, like your lead, so your manager or your project manager?
Yeah, it really depends on the company, but in my like as we do like in try market, we just like see all the like manual test cases not covered in automation and just like choosing them and working with them. Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What would you recommend for handling like test data? So data that you need to rely upon, like run the tests and how like some
Yeah, it's a good question.
Can you repeat this question again?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. Like, what would be like my solution for working with data? Because it's a UI test, you may create like some kind of like mock service, so they have like consistent data and not be dependent of the data that's returning to UI. But it's kind of like tricky because like if you mock your let's say API responses, right? And the API scheme may be changed and you won't able to find them in your test because it still relies on the old API schema. So you won't be able to see this issue. In this case, I will still recommend to use integration tests in pair of functional mock tests. In terms of data, it's actually a lot of solutions. You can create test data specific for your test, or use testing databases and upload all the data before your test as a setup. Yeah, I would say just use testing data for your purposes. Don't try to work with real data because it's maybe changed. Yeah, very general answer, but I don't know what else to add here to the house. Other question, guys?
All right.
Yeah, this is kind of a general topic. There's introduction, there's less technical stuff, and yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
All right. This is my favorite part. Kang, can I ask you? So we started this from our third meetup or maybe second meetup. So we usually invite someone from management, and we like to ask some questions that for other people who is trying to apply for a job or is looking for a job, but they kind of hesitate, and maybe they're good, but they cannot pass the interview because of their just behavior questions or something. So we have 3 questions and 4 suggestions, right? So this is Frank, by the way, my QA manager. I'm sorry, I also kind of nervous a little bit, but still. Yeah. Frank, can I ask you to come a little bit closer? Because we are trying. Okay. So could you please tell us from your perspective, what are you looking for in candidate when you do interview or when you do interview process?
Sure. I had a few beers in me, so I'll probably give you a very honest answer. Okay. So what I look for in a candidate is someone who really enjoys the process. You know, people who enjoy technology, who actually, because that's what's going to sustain you, keep you coming to work. When you got to wake up in the morning, get ready, and deal with that shitty commute. What's going to really drive you is the fact that you enjoy the process. So that's sort of what I try to look for in the resume. So when I look at the resume, I kind of look at what their interests are, what they've been up to, what field of technology they've been working in, things like that. So to give me a hint of what their interests are. Yeah.
Awesome. What's your favorite interview question then?
I have 2 favorite interview questions. One of them is, give me an example of a time that you've succeeded, and what were the contributing factors to that success. And the other one is, give me an example of when you failed, and how did you deal with that? I don't ask a lot of technical questions because I figure if you're in front of me, you sort of passed.
Ryan did his job.
Yes, Ryan did his job. You're technical enough. What I try to look for is, since you're going to be working in a team, I try to see how you're going to work within our team, within our culture. So those are the 2 questions that I ask. And yeah.
And what's your the red flag when you do interview? For example, they pass everything, and then something goes wrong. Basically.
So the red flags come from the 2 questions that those 2 questions that I ask. So I ask them for when you've succeeded, and if they start taking all the credit, they go, "I succeeded because I did this, I did that." To me, you don't succeed in a vacuum. There's always some factor, someone you're working with or someone who contributed to your success. And I want to see, the person, the candidate, give like credit to that, you know, because that tells me, you know, that they know what it is to work in a team, and they realize that, you know, it's a team effort. You know, maybe, you know, I did contribute more than others, but other people still contributed. And when I ask about people's failures, I see if they try to diffuse the failure, like overly diffuse it to everybody else, like whether how much credit they, you know, how much responsibility they take for their failure, you know, and how they dealt with it. So those are the red flags that I look for, and they usually come from those two questions.
Totally makes sense. And can you give like resume tips? What is your catching your eye? Like when you're looking for resumes, like, I know that you might see a lot of resumes, right?
Sure. Only resume tip I can give you is for my own resume, which is I keep it short. I keep it less than 2 pages, and I make it very like to the point. Like here's my contact info, my objective, my skill sets, and my experience. And then in the experience, I just put what I've done and that's it. You know, and then very last thing that I put is, you know, like, you know, but I do include my education, my outside interests. But I try to keep it within 2 pages. And if my work experience goes beyond 2 pages, I cut my work experience out. I only provide information for the last maybe 7 years, if that. I keep it short because, you know, like the guy's reading resumes all day. He doesn't want to be reading paragraphs and going through 3-4 pages of stuff, you know? Yeah.
All right.
And the other hint I can give you is, this is gonna sound hokey, really, but live a good resume. As in, you know, like, be very mindful or be picky about the jobs that you take, because realize you should put in your time if you do pick a job. And, you know, so always look for, like when you're being interviewed, always think of it as an opportunity that you're also interviewing them. You know, as in like, you know, when you're sitting there and you're being asked questions, you're answering them, just think in your mind, wow, this guy's an asshole. I don't want to work here. You know what I mean? Things like that. Like you got to be mindful of that. And when they give you the opportunity to ask them questions, take that opportunity. One of the questions I always ask is, well, why should I work here? You know, like, why do you work here? Because these are important questions because, you know, like living a good resume, not living your life for your job. I don't mean that. But, you know, like living your resume as in, you know, like, you know, being careful about the jobs that you pick and how you perform in your jobs. That's the best way to build a good resume. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Frank.
Sure.
Thank you. Awesome. So let me put. And we have another presenter today. Vitaliy, where are you? All right. Come over here.
Type of schedule.
Okay. Welcome, Vitaliy, again.
So, hi, my name is Vitaliy Ignatov, and I'm QA engineer here at Verifi. And today I'm going to talk about some vitally important lessons in automation. And yeah, before I start, I have to warn you, it's going to be boring. I will show a lot of code and a lot of text, no video, no animation. So you should probably request your money back now. You're going to give refunds, right?
Luckily, it's a free event.
Oh, okay. No refunds. All right, let's get started. So yeah, so this is some vital points which I'm going to touch. And let's start with first one. Let it break. So does anybody know what I pictured here?
A breaker.
Exactly. So this is circuit breaker, and it has only one purpose in life. And this purpose is to break. right, to break the circuit. And so is your test case. If it doesn't break, it has no value, right? And it's not just has no value, it has negative value. It's dangerous because if circuit breaker doesn't break, your house might burn. So let's talk about tests which don't fail. So this is typical, this screenshot from Bamboo. And typically when you look at this, you see how many tests you executed, how many failed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And when you look at this, you probably will pay attention to only this 9 failed tests, and the rest 993 tests, you don't even care about them because they passed. Why you even look at them, right? So, but it's also possible that among those 993 tests, there are some tests which always pass. They designed in a way they never fail. And as I mentioned before, they're really harmful because you think this is covered, but it's not covered because test designed in a way that it doesn't fail. So it could be designed intentionally or unintentionally, and it's very important to identify such tests and fix them. So this is a true story. Couple years ago, I reviewed code by one of the junior QA, and test case is simple. You create some resource on node 1 of application and verify that it's also available on node 2. And as you can see, there was like this part which I highlighted in red. So the person created resource on node 1, assured that it's available on node 1, and then he looks at node 2 and creates resource if it's not available on node 2. And then it, asserts that it's available on node 2. And when I asked why you even did this, why you even created it if it's not available, the person said, well, the test might fail otherwise. So, and you will be surprised. It looks funny, but again, it's true story. And there are way more stories like this. So a lot of times people just afraid of failure. So they think if they create tests which always pass, they will look cool because it never breaks. You might be a really good automation engineer. So, and next example is unintentionally incapable of failing tests. So again, this is actual code. There's not much to see here. Basically, you have some element which has attribute disabled true, and I really want to see if it's disabled. So I might write something like this. So expect this attribute to be disabled to be true. And I run it, and it's all green. It's all good. So average automation engineer will be happy at this point and move on to next test. But if you're better than average, you will try to check if it fails. How would I check if it fails? I reverse conditions. So I make this disabled attribute to be false. I keep assertion same and run it. And as you can see, now it's suspiciously green. It still passes. So at this point, you really need to investigate what's wrong, because you see clearly it has false value, and you say it's to be true. It should be failed. So once you investigate it, you probably will notice that this false value is not Boolean; it's actually string. And in JavaScript, non-empty string is true in a Boolean context. So it's actually it is true, right? So you need to change your assertion. So once you change it like this to be true, you run it again, you see it failed, it's all good. Then you run it again and with original condition, and it passes. So at this point, we have a good test case, and we know it can fail. So yeah, this is my next point about managing test data. So let's just start with Jasmine describe block structure. It doesn't have to be Jasmine. There is a lot of test frameworks. They all similar. They all have pretty much same structure. So you see this it function, it's individual test. There is before all, before each. Before all executes only once, before all of them. Before each executes for each of them. And you have after each, after all. And you can also have some nested describes, which we won't describe today. So when you look at the structure, it feels natural to create some test data in before all or before each. And also it feels natural to do cleaning in after each and after all. But there is a problem with this approach. So this is the first problem. You start execution. It created all the data it needed. It started running. And after a couple of hits, kaboom happened. So what kaboom could be? It could be just you stopping the test. Maybe you get bored, I don't know. Maybe you realized you passed some wrong parameter. You just need to rerun it. So you stop it. And what happens? You created some data, but it wasn't cleaned. So your system has some data which could be potentially harmful for your own test when you run it next time. There's also a case when you execute your specs in parallel. So specs is basically what we call spec. It's a file containing a bunch of tests. You can run them in parallel to save some time. So this is just 2 threads. And as you can see, you started like spec 1 and spec 2 at the same time. Spec 1 finishes fast, so spec 3 starts. At this point, you can see that spec 2 shares, I mean, not shares, but it executes on a system which also has some spec 1 and spec 3 data. And spec 4 also has runs on a system which has spec 3 and spec 5 data, which means even if you intend to clean data, let's say on a spec 3, after all, it still can affect other specs. So you need to design your spec in a way that you're independent on other specs, because you might be shared same system, which will have all this data. So there's some, too many letters. I don't know if you want to read it. So some tips, but basically what it says, whatever you have in the system, initially you can use it read only, don't modify it, because other specs will be using same data. If you need to modify data, the data has to be created by the test itself. So don't expect that spec then runs before performs cleanup. And actually you can run it in parallel. So you should expect some data in your system. And what I propose, don't perform cleanup and after all, do it in before all. That's in this way you ensure that you start clean and there is no residual data that can interfere with your test. So here's some data naming tips. It doesn't matter what you name, it's just general idea. You use your own name to assume ownership. So if somebody has problem with your data, they know who to ask what's wrong. Then there is like unique spec ID, usually it's like ticket number, whatever you worked on. And this is to separate your spec from others. It will protect your spec from other specs and other specs from your spec. And number 3 is, I call it unique run ID. You use some unique value, like timestamp, for each run. That's how you protect your spec from yourself. So next time you run same spec, you'll be looking for different resource name if you didn't have chance to clean up this. And that's how I propose to do cleanup. So you have separate function, and if you do it from database, you can use like. So basically, it's safe. It's safe because you're only cleaning up your data. So I run spec whatever 192.30, and it cleans only 192.30 data. And you do it in before all to ensure clean state. And you can also do it in after all, but I would say might be not necessary. The thing is, you might need the data on early stages because let's say there's some failures. You probably want to, manually check what's failing. So you will be logging into the system, you will be performing search, and you want this data to be there. So on the early stages, don't even do cleanup. You might use it when your project is stable. So, oh yeah, I told you this was boring, so I fall asleep on keyboard. So yeah, I'm sorry. And speaking of sleeping, this is my next vital point. The key is again sleeping. So yeah, I just took some random code from the internet, and that's how you spot an amateur. You see this thread.sleep. So yeah, you can see what person tries to do. He goes to google.com, then he searches for Selenium, but since results are not instant, the person wants to sleep a little bit. And yeah, then he finds element and clicks. So there are lots of disadvantages of sleep. First of all, you don't know how long you're gonna sleep. So if it's not enough, you will have failure, and you will increase the sleep to avoid failures, and then it will become unmanageable. You will have a lot of sleeps, and it will be very generous sleeps. You will waste a lot of time. And again, if sleep time is too generous, and you have, let's say, hundreds tests, but then you keep working on your test, you might have thousands of tests in your project, it will run forever. So what you should do instead of sleeping, so this is another example. It's actually some real test I was working. So basically, you call some API, and it should change execute property from 1 to 0. So a simple test, you start by asserting that it's 1, then you call some cleanup API, and this is your assertion that it's 0. But again, it's not always instant. And should we add sleep here? The answer is not. We should poll for condition. So I'll show you implementation on the next slide. But what we do here, we actually polling for maximum 15 seconds. But it doesn't mean we will use whole 15 seconds. So this is implementation, which is, you can see you can pass parameters which, let's say, poll interval, which by default 500 milliseconds, and that's the maximum you will waste. So if your condition satisfied, let's say, in 2 seconds, then you won't sleep for whole 15 seconds. You will exit this earlier. And again, I don't do any assertions here. I just return result and do assertion here. So I don't know, anybody has any questions so far? Guess not. So yeah, so there are lots of advantages of polling for conditions. So you reduce number of non-deterministic tests. So those are tests which sometimes pass, sometimes fail, and they're very dangerous. You'll not unnecessarily slow down your test execution. You can be very generous when you provide your timeout value, because most likely it won't be used fully. And the only time when you use your full timeout is for negative cases, when something should not happen. So how do you know that something didn't happen? Let's say you do some action and your database value is supposed to change. It's easy, right? You can look for change. But what if it's not supposed to change? How do you know it didn't change? You cannot instantly check database and say, hey, it's passed. You cannot do it. You need to give it some time. So you need to think about it. And basically, you can still call for condition. So if it fails, it will fail earlier. But if it passes, it will use full timeout value. So, yeah. This is a famous quote by Francisco de Goya. It was written like 200 years ago, and even then people knew that sleep, produces monsters. It's very dangerous. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah.
No questions? All right.
All right. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much, Vitaliy. I think that was very useful. Was it? Or no? Okay, so we have more time actually for the fun stuff, right? So let's do this way. One sec. Okay, that was. Oh yeah, so we also were gonna do the webinar about start with Selenium on Java on February 5th at 7 p.m. If some of you interested, you can scan this thing and you will get to the messenger group. I will let you. And so now